Well, hello and good morning. Happy, beautiful morning in Annapolis, everybody. Welcome. I know there's so much networking going on here. Isn't this great? I love it that it's hard to get people to sit and pay attention because there's so many good people to meet and good things to talk about. I just wanted to say that my name is Kelly Schultz, and I have the very good pleasure of being the CEO of the Maryland Tech Council. Last year was our first Advocacy Summit, which was produced as a virtual event. Who's excited that we're actually here in person this year, right? It's amazing. It's a totally new world. For those who aren't familiar with the Maryland Tech Council, we are the largest technology and sciences trade association in the state. With more than 600 member organizations across the state, we are the premier organization working year-round to advocate for the interests of technology and life science companies in our local, state, and federal level. We are thrilled to set aside a full day. Full day. Drink up on the caffeine, people. Be hydrated. In order to connect with our elected officials, discuss the remarkable work taking place in Maryland's life science and technology industries, and share our policy priorities for 2023. Events like today cannot happen without the support of our larger community. So I would like to take a moment just to thank our sponsors. So if you're here, just raise your hand. Our title sponsor, AT&T, thank you. Champion sponsors, AstraZeneca, Gilead Sciences, and Horizon Therapeutics. Advocate sponsors, Adventist Healthcare, Alexandria Real Estate Equities, Amgen, Biotechnology Innovation Organization, the Maryland Department of Commerce, who I still have an affinity for, and Pfizer. Our ally sponsors, Becton Dickinson Integrated Diagnostic Solutions, that's a mouthful, and Iron Bow Technologies. Our legislative coalition, Amgen, AT&T, Biotechnology Innovation Organization, Crown Castle, Comcast Business, Kite, Lilly, and Pfizer. And a very special thank you to our strategic partners who support the Maryland Tech Council all year long. And I'll just pause here just for a second because I know that my team is probably standing outside in the lobby welcoming new people, but I will just say on a personal level, the team at the Maryland Technology Council is second to none. They are amazing and they did a wonderful job putting this together. And I would like to thank the Advocacy Summit Planning Committee, who are instrumental in producing today's programs, which is a great lineup. Alex Cameron from Becton Dickinson Integrated Diagnostic Solutions, Chris Carroll from AT&T, Craig Hill from Pfizer, Sherry Giorgio from Gilead Sciences, Ashley Greenspan from Crown Castle, woo! Avi Halpert from United Therapeutics, Tiffany Harvey from Comcast, Darren Johnson from Amgen, Tim Lydon from Eli Lilly, Amy Prentice from AstraZeneca, Liz Pajolas from Horizon Therapeutics, Barrett Stradford from Biotechnology Innovation Organization, and Laura Terraldo from MD 5G Partnership. So thank you all for doing incredible work to get us here today. I'd also like to, because we're in Annapolis, I'd like to recognize the elected officials that are here in the room, and I think that there was one that I saw, but he might have had to have gone, but is Josh Stanko still here? He may have had to go to do work for us in Annapolis, back on the floor. But we're very happy. We're going to have several legislators here this evening for our dinner program after they have finished their work. And so I just want to be able to, obviously be grateful for them. Okay, so a few housekeeping issues just right off the bat. Virtual attendees, hello. We have cameras back in the room, so anybody that is joining us via technology, please email any questions you have during any of our sessions to myvoice@mdtechcouncil.com. That's myvoice@mdtechcouncil.com. And for all of you other technology users in the room, if you're going to be tweeting out today or using social media, please use hashtag 2023 Annapolis Day. That way we can garner a lot of support for what we're doing and continue with our advocacy efforts. So, why are we here? Maryland represents one of the strongest technology and life science hubs in the country. We were ranked #1 last year for technology workforce growth and #2 in the country for life science research talent. Combined, our technology and life science industries are responsible for more than 260,000 jobs in Maryland. At the Maryland Tech Council, we are building off of a transformational year in 2022 when we created regional chapters in the Baltimore region, Prince George's County, and the Chesapeake region. And we launched the BioHub Maryland Workforce Development Initiative with $5 million grants from both half from the state and half from the federal government. We look forward to building on that momentum in 2023. We're ready. The new year begins a new gubernatorial administration, historic gubernatorial administration at that, and new members and leadership changes in the Maryland General Assembly. On behalf of our almost 700 tech and life science member organizations, MTC will connect with new leadership and continue to communicate the enormously beneficial impact our member companies have in the state and across the globe. That is precisely why we host our Advocacy Summit and Leadership Dinner each year in Annapolis, because building and maintaining this innovation ecosystem requires a meaningful dialogue with policymakers at all levels of government. Today's Advocacy Summit aims to advance that dialogue and share insights and solutions for some of the most pressing issues facing Maryland, such as the connectivity, equity, workforce development, inflation, patient care, and data privacy. Throughout the day, you will hear from industry experts and patients on how policy choices can improve job creation, workforce training, patient care, and more. My hope is that each of us leaves today from this summit with more knowledge, we're more connected, and more empowered to succeed in the state of Maryland. Let me just close by once again thanking our wonderful sponsors who made today's event possible. We hope to see everyone at tonight's cocktail reception. Yes, there is a path to get there. And our leadership dinner. Our keynote speaker, as hopefully you all know, will be our new Lieutenant Governor, Aruna Miller. We have a schedule change, however, this afternoon for the 1:45 session this afternoon on data privacy. Andrew Kingman, who was scheduled to speak and is the president of Mariner Strategies, was planning to join us from Boston, but he was summoned to testify today at 3 o'clock. So we have a schedule change for 1:45 session on data privacy. So we will talk about his bills and we will catch up on that. But our first panel today is focused on Maryland's life science ecosystem, future challenges and opportunities. It is my great pleasure to introduce our panel leader on that, Mr. Brad Stewart, who is the Senior Vice President of Business Development at Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, and also a very senior person on our board of directors, so I like him a lot. Mr. Brad Stewart, thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. As Kelly said, thank you very much for being here. I think as Kelly described me as senior, I think she just means old in a kind way, but I'll take it what it is. I've been involved with the Maryland Tech Council for a long time, and I'm very fortunate to be part of the organization and especially the team that works for MTC. So thank you all for being here, not only those here in person, but those online. So I'd like to introduce the people who are going to come up and speak with me. Alex Cameron from Becton Dickinson. Coming up, Alex. And Brian Stamper with Immunomic Therapeutics. Always on. So we're going to try and have a conversation. I don't want to stand at a podium and just talk with everyone here. I wanted to try and have a conversation with Brian and Alex, and we certainly want to invite everyone here into the room, into the conversation. And what we're going to talk about is our life sciences industry, but really the challenges and opportunities we face from an employment perspective. So I think you'll see in a minute, I'll ask Brian and Alex to introduce themselves. Since I'm talking, I will sort of start with that. As I said, I'm Brad Stewart, and as Kelly said that, I work for Montgomery County Economic Development to help grow our life sciences industry here. This is my 26th year in the state of Maryland, all of that working in life sciences. This is what I've done for my entire career. I was a scientist who went into the commercial side of life sciences, which is primarily what I've done, starting, running companies. There's a lot of startup companies in Maryland in the life sciences industry which are at the research stage. My experience is a little bit different. Almost all of the companies I've run are commercial. So my last company was an in vitro diagnostics company. We were commercial in 18 countries around the world when I sold it. So I've done manufacturing here in the state of Maryland. We've done commercial sales from around the world here in the state of Maryland. And I can tell you over the 26 years I've been here, this has been a growing passion project for me to see this industry grow and be successful in the state. Sometimes it's frustrating, because you want to see things grow more quickly and build a bigger base, but when I'm honest and take a step back and think about what it was like 2.5 decades ago here, it's dramatically different. We have an incredible growing ecosystem of life sciences companies in Maryland. In addition to that, they're very different than when I got here. When I first got here, they were research companies, small 20, 30, 40 person companies, if that, very high risk, which is sort of the industry's MO. But the interesting thing when you look at it now, not only do we have a lot more companies which are commercial, we have some massive global companies which operate here in the state of Maryland. Companies like AstraZeneca and Kite, which Brian's very familiar with both of. Companies like Becton Dickinson, which Alex comes from. We have others like GSK, so we're very fortunate here. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to ask Alex, since you're next, to sort of tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here and your history.
Certainly. Thank you, Brad. And good morning, everyone. Really happy to be here in Annapolis today. I'm Alex Cameron from Becton Dickinson. I live up in Baltimore County in Moncton with my wife and 2 young children. Moved to Maryland about 4 years ago, and we love it. We plan on staying here to raise our children. So really thrilled to be part of this group today talking about the future of Maryland and life sciences in particular. So Becton Dickinson, even if you haven't heard of it, you know it. So I mentioned my 2 young children, one of whom is only 4 months old. When I was in the delivery room recently with my wife, I counted 27 different products that BD made just in that room. We were the largest distributor of the COVID test swab. We were the largest distributor globally of the syringes used for the COVID vaccine. We touch on every single point of healthcare, from needles that are used to draw blood to complicated machinery used in laboratories to run complex diagnostic tests. In Maryland alone, we employ over 2,000 people in a wide variety of roles. We do basic manufacturing, we do advanced electromechanical manufacturing, R&D. We also house a large marketing team here, regulatory, compliance, quality. We employ people with high school degrees and people with PhDs and MBAs. And as we look at the future of BD in the state, for us it's all about how can we continue to grow? How can we make sure that we partner with the state and with others to make sure the right people with the right skills want to live here and are able to get to our sites and be a part of the great work that we do. So looking forward to learning some more throughout the day and meeting many of you.
Thanks, Alex. Brian?
Good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here. This is an exciting topic and a bit of a passion project for me as well around workforce development. I'm currently the VP Operations at a company called Immunomic Therapeutics. We're a 50-person startup company in Rockville. Our lead product is a cell therapy product for glioblastoma, which is a pretty nasty brain cancer. For right now, the standard of care, people who are diagnosed, the median survival is less than 1.5 years. So it's actually quite scary. And I know there's plenty of friends I've known who have had family members who have passed away from it, and so it's one that we're very passionate about. Prior to Immunomics, I was at Kite Pharma for about 3.5 years. I was a manufacturing lead for the site up in Frederick County. Hi, Sherry, I see you sitting out there. That was very exciting to start that facility up. We started up from a grass field all the way up to a company now that our facility now that is producing more than 20 therapies per week to support cancer patients, which is so exciting. Prior to that, I was at MedImmune, AstraZeneca. I moved here to Maryland in 2009 to join that company. And again, that's a company, it was so exciting to be a part of that facility and that company and to watch it grow from the old Medi days to AZ as it is today and all the wonderful things they're doing for patients. So for me, I joined the Tech Council when I joined Kite back in 2019, and I've had the opportunity to participate with the BioHub and to really help to drive workforce development in the region. For me, what I see within the life sciences industry, which we'll get into, is workforce development is for me at least, topic number one. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to continue to grow and to develop talent and find people from underrepresented populations, underrepresented areas in the state and region to come into the industry, because there's so many great opportunities and frankly, such a great need for people to join this industry to allow us to continue to grow. So very happy to be here today and looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Brian and Alex. I appreciate that. So I wanted to just echo something that Kelly said earlier. One, after our discussion, we're very happy to answer questions. So please, if you have them, think of them as you're coming along. We'll answer questions at the end. For everyone who's joining us online, we appreciate you being here. Again, the email address is myvoice@mdtechcouncil.com. You're welcome to send questions in that way, and we'll answer as many as we can before we run out of time. So just a little bit of background. The three of us know how important the life sciences industry is, but to be fair, it's our life, right? This is what we do every day, and it's easy to take for granted that what we do every day and what we're passionate about, everyone else is, but I mean, this is just what we do. So I think some things that just sort of set the stage for why this is important to the state of Maryland, right? It's important for a lot of reasons for the world. Obviously, you spent a lot of time, Brian, at Kite, literally saving people's lives and making therapies that these were primarily the last option for people with cancer, and it was literally the difference between life and death. Alex, as you mentioned, Becton Dickinson makes products that are integral to almost every form of healthcare you could imagine around the world. And so I think sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the fact this is a complex business with huge challenges and huge regulatory hurdles and huge amounts of capital involved, but at the end of the day, what we're doing is trying to help save people's lives and improve their lives. And so that's critical, and I think the other part of that is, so what does that effect have just on our state of Maryland? You know, this is the 4th largest biotech hub in the United States. There are 54,000 people that are employed directly in the life sciences industry here, and that has about a $20 billion per year economic impact on the state. It's a significant industry. If you look at what people make working in life sciences, Brian touched on a point that we'll get into later, talking about reaching out to underserved populations and trying to bring in people from different backgrounds into the life sciences industry. In the state of Maryland, the average salary is $69,000 per year for a full-time employee. In the life sciences industry, it's 80% more than that. The average life sciences employee makes $129,000 a year. It's dramatically different what people are able to make in this industry, producing high-value products. Something I think that's easy to miss is these facilities that are built here are massive financial investments that companies are willing to make in the scale of hundreds and multiple hundreds of millions of dollars in capital, buildings, and those sorts of things. And they're incredibly difficult to move. Once a facility is in place, it's almost impossible to move them, because there's not only so much investment. Typically, these facilities have licenses from the FDA, which are incredibly difficult to move or replicate somewhere else. So as positive as that is, and as much as the opportunity as there is in life sciences, there's some challenges that we face here. There's well over 3,000 jobs in the state of Maryland today in life sciences that are vacant. There just aren't skilled people to take those jobs. And I think one of the things that's important is Alex and Brian, as people who've hired hundreds of people here in the state, and maybe in Brian's case, thousands of people, it's an industry where we just need people with skills to do the job. It doesn't matter what your background is, it doesn't matter what your race is, it doesn't matter what your sexual preferences are or anything else. It's literally an industry where there's a need for people who just have the skills to do the jobs, and they would welcome anyone in the door who has those. So it is, I think, an incredible opportunity for us. So the challenges, though, when you look at it, we've been very fortunate in Maryland to grow over the years, but I think in that growth, and particularly during the pandemic, we've seen companies like Novavax grow significantly here. Becton Dickinson grew significantly during the pandemic here and was doing amazing things to contribute to helping to solve that problem. The challenge is when you see all that growth, it's sometimes hard to have the context to understand whether or not you're growing as fast as other people are that you're competing with. Last year, the Maryland Tech Council sponsored a study by the Milken Institute, and what we learned from that study is that Maryland's actually losing ground very rapidly to other states in the life sciences industry. So even though we're growing, we're going backwards, and we're starting to see other states becoming much more aggressive in attracting this industry, supporting workforce development, building training programs and institutes to do that. And these are things that if we don't address soon are going to have an increasingly significant negative impact on our industry here in the state. I did some analysis a few months ago just to sort of try and quantify what that means. So when I looked at it and looked at what our growth in life sciences should have been over the last 5 years, based on our historical averages and based on what's happening around the country, in the last 5 years alone, we've lost almost $500 million in gross domestic product by not growing as quickly and keeping up with those people who are around us. So it's a very significant issue and an opportunity for the state. So with that long prelude, I wanted to sort of turn it back over to Brian. There are a couple of people in this room who have been intimately involved with a project called BioHub Maryland, which Kelly alluded to. Michelle Ferrone, who I think is in the back, but there are lights in my eyes, so I can't prove that, has really been the champion of this project since its inception and responsible for its inception. But Brian, you've been involved also from the very beginning, and can you tell us a little bit about BioHub and the objectives and the problems you're trying to solve?
Sure, thanks, Brad. I'm an operations guy, so I like to keep things very simple. So in simple terms, the BioHub is an opportunity for us to grow the workforce and provide the people that we need to support the life science industry and the growth that we should be seeing here in the region. There's a lot of different ways to do that. You can put on websites and do job boards and provide career pathways, those types of things, and that's important and good. But I think the really big win that we have the opportunity to jump on is to train the workforce and find the people and bring them in and give them opportunities, especially for those people who may not otherwise have that opportunity. And so the BioHub is right now, I'll say like current state today, for example, we're meeting on Monday with the team to review the curriculum for training for the new BioHub Training Center. We've been scouting for real estate to find a good location for this, and we're very, very close to locking that down, which we're excited about. And that will give us a chance to get people in the door and take them into an environment that mimics a life science manufacturing environment. So that way, when they come out of this program, a company can say, okay, you've gone through the BioHub program, you know what you're doing. We know that this is a person who can help me right away. The risk is very low from a company perspective that I'm going to hire someone who may not work out. And so I can hire these people. It gives these people an edge over the common population. Not to mention, it speeds things up on the training side for the companies themselves once the people do start. And so there's a lot of wins. So we're so excited about the grant that Kelly mentioned at the start. That's a great way for us to get started. That's not enough to keep us going forever. But it's a great way for us to get started to allow us to train these people and create the workforce of the future.
Thanks, Brian. And Alex, so maybe you can add a little bit. You've got over 2,000 employees here in the state and a pretty diverse set of operations. Give us an idea of sort of what your workforce looks like, the variety of skills they have, and then sort of the challenges you face trying to fill the positions there.
Yeah, certainly. So I want to start with something that I've actually been trying to overcome recently, which is how do we get people to stay in Maryland? So at BD, we do a rotational program for really bright, promising young PhD and postdoc graduates. We sign them to a 3 or 4 year contract, and every 18 months we move them, and we move them all over the world. So you might do a stint in Switzerland, and then San Diego, and you come to Baltimore, and at the end of your rotations, we offer you a job, and you get to pick, where do you want to go? What projects do you want to work on? What site do you want to be a part of? Overwhelmingly, people have the best feedback for the science and research we do here in Maryland. They want to be a part of these programs, but they overwhelmingly choose to move to San Diego, to I mean, to move to North Carolina. And I recently was talking to some of the graduates of this program and trying to understand why. I mean, it's the same company. It's from a career standpoint, you know, it should be similar. And what I picked up on was you don't really have the ecosystem here quite yet. What I mean by that is when you want to attract and retain highly skilled technical talent, often their partner also is a highly skilled technical person. So access to universities, access to other companies that are doing cutting edge R&D is crucial. And they just, in their minds, don't see that in Maryland. I'm not sure that's totally fair. I think actually there is a lot here, and the state has come a long way through partnership with industry. But we can do better at branding ourselves and at making clear what these opportunities are. On the other end, we had a huge, huge influx of demand for manufacturing during COVID and continue to. Just the amount of supplies we have to provide globally that we make here in Maryland. We can't find people. We have a lot of open jobs right now. And there seems to be a disconnect there as well, because sometimes I'll be talking to somebody who's in a government position. Recently, I was at an event held by the Baltimore County Council people, and they're saying they're focused on nothing more than getting these good blue-collar jobs. And we have them, but we can't fill them. So why is that? And I want to understand that, and I think we can close that gap somehow. And I'm really proud of the manufacturing jobs we offer at BD. These are great roles. They include healthcare. Everybody in the company gets a 401k program with not even a match, just money put in, especially in these somewhat lower paying jobs. And lower paying is also relative. You talked about the average salaries in life sciences being much greater. These are manufacturing jobs that can pay upwards of $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. So on both sides of the equation, we want to do more than we literally can, given our ability to retain talent in Baltimore or in Maryland, or to get the people we need to fill our factories and do these really crucial high-end manufacturing jobs.
Well, thanks, Alex. I think you pointed out something that's important. I mentioned earlier that we've all spent our lives working in life sciences, so this is what we do. I think one of the challenges, as I think about it, is it's not an industry where most people probably know someone who works in life sciences, right? I know thousands of people who work in life sciences, but if I were to walk down the street in my neighborhood, other than I do have a neighbor who works at QIAGEN, that's probably it, right? So it's not necessarily the same as running into a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer or an accountant or a teacher or fireman or policeman, someone you just, kids or younger people have as role models that they just see every day. Some of that's density, right? We don't have as much density in life sciences as we do here. So I think that's part of it, right? How do we get the word out and help people understand that life sciences is a critical industry and with great opportunities. And those opportunities aren't what sometimes people think. So one thing I try and partition these into is research and development and manufacturing. So we've been talking about manufacturing. A lot of people think about life sciences as people in white lab coats who have PhDs and are standing at a bench all day long and those sorts of things. But that's fair. There certainly are a large number of research and development facilities here, including the government, right? We have NIH and NCI and other people here in the state. But that's not where a lot of the job openings are today, and that's also not where the demand is. So maybe either one of you, maybe I'll start with you, Brian. You started with a brand new facility that was, like you said, a piece of grass, and I think when you left 500 employees. What was that journey like, going from literally nothing to and just to be fair, the facility that Brian was running, the Kite Pharmaceuticals facility, is the largest cell therapy manufacturing facility in the world. It is a state-of-the-world facility. It's an amazing place. So.
It is a special place. So I think to echo what Alex was saying, it can be a challenge to hire. So I think about early on. So when I joined back in 2019, we were poaching, right? And so we were hiring people from other companies, and so people from GSK, and people from AZ, and people from other places, and that can only get you so far, right? Because there's a limited talent pool there. And so as Alex was saying, he's having trouble filling these jobs. And like I said, you can only go so far with poaching. And so it's vital that we continue to train people and create this workforce of the future. Otherwise, we will stunt the growth of the life sciences industry in the region. And that's not good for anybody. As Brad was saying, there's a significant GDP impact associated with that. And so once we got past the poaching phase, I'll call it, we started to look at in other areas. And so working like with commerce and labor, we implemented an apprentice program. And so we have students come in where they are full-time employees, but then they're also part-time students at the local community college, in this case, Frederick Community College. And we give them full pay, benefits, the whole smash. And then we also pay for their tuition. And give them the opportunity to have a full-time role. And then once they complete their program, then they're eligible, assuming they perform well at work, then they're eligible then for promotion and to enter the workforce formally. And so it's a great deal. And again, with that program, we're really working hard to find people who were from underrepresented populations, because we feel that's a great talent source for a lot of places, and diversity is strength, frankly. And so using things like the apprentice program is a great way to pull talent into the industry that may not otherwise be there. And recently also, the Tech Council signed an agreement with an organization called Platoon 22, and that's a phenomenal thing to do. So for those who are not real familiar, I'm still learning myself, to be honest, what everything Platoon 22 does, but it's a way to help veterans re-enter the workforce upon their return, right, and give them some great opportunities. And so things like that, I know this is not to stereotype too much, but we had hired several veterans during the course of my time there, and they were some of our best employees. And so it was something where it was a great fit, an easy fit for them, and they just needed the opportunity to walk through the door. And so partnerships with Platoon 22 provide those types of opportunities. And so I think you have to get a little creative to staff facilities like the one up in Frederick for Kite, where there's 500 people, because those people aren't just going to show up magically, right, and say, all right, I'm here to work. You have to go out and find them, and you have to put the effort into doing that. And programs like BioHub and Platoon 22 and others are a great way to do that.
So thanks, Brian. As long as we're talking a little bit about Kite, maybe you can give the 30-second explanation to everyone here about what those 500 people do. Trying to explain just how cutting edge this work is.
30 seconds, okay. So it's quite a broad range, and so as Alex was saying, we do have our PhDs on site as the technical leads, but then we've got people working in the warehouse. And so a guy I worked with there, his name is Jay, and he was the warehouse manager, and he would say, yeah, my job is to pick things up and set them down. And so it was a very simple way of saying, but it's obviously very much more than that. But it was in the warehouse roles, you're looking for people who don't need a college degree. They don't even an associate's degree. They just need to have the right work ethic and attitude, and we can teach them the rest. And so there's those types of roles. There's lots and lots of manufacturing roles. That was where I was most intimately involved. There's quality control roles, quality assurance roles, facilities techs. We need people who can run HVAC, right? So it's a big industrial building, and one of the critical elements of a FDA facility, a regulated facility, is to make sure that the air pressures and HVAC is all controlled properly. Without that, the FDA will come in and shut you down because you're not controlling your environment correctly. And so those types of roles are critical. And so it's not just the people in the white lab coats at the bench top. There's people who are back in the guts of the building, keeping the lights on and make sure things happen. People who are working with global supply chain to make sure that we can get these products out to patients in a timely manner, especially in an industry like cell therapy, where it's the products are autologous, meaning that one manufacturing batch is for one patient. Timing is absolutely everything, because these people are in the hospital waiting on these products to show up, and in some cases, frankly, the product doesn't get there fast enough, and it's a tragic event. So all these types of roles are absolutely critical to keep the business going. We need business, so we need finance roles. There's a huge variety of roles needed to keep a company like that going. That was more than 30 seconds. Sorry.
I'll take it, Brian. I appreciate it. So, Alex, how many facilities does Becton Dickinson have here in Maryland, and sort of what are the cross-section of things you're doing in the state?
Yeah, so we have 7 main facilities, a few smaller sites as well, but 7 where we do, in pretty much all of them, a combination of advanced manufacturing or R&D or support activities like marketing, regulatory, quality. What's really interesting about this is how broad the operation is, and not just the roles that people do, but the things we make. So, for example, some of you who live up north, if you've been on 83, there's a big BD building you can see as you drive on I-83. We manufacture in that one building the majority of clinical media that's used in the entire United States. So that's like an auger plate. So when you or a loved one is in the hospital and there's concern that they have an infection, that is the key consumable component used to identify, is there a microorganism in the bloodstream or urine? What is it, and how do you treat it? So that's all that's happening right in that building. About a mile away at 7 Lufton, which is our major facility in Maryland, we're doing cutting-edge research, and we're doing prototype builds of really complex electromechanical machinery. These are generally things that at some point will make sense to manufacture overseas. But what is unique about our site in Maryland is for the first 3 to 4 years after releasing a new product, we build it here. That's really unique. Most of our competitors just ship it abroad immediately. That allows us to refine it, to scale it, and really make sure that we'll be successful in the long run. So really, it truly is a wide range from things that are simple and high volume to incredibly complex, where the people who are building these things are actually still involved in helping us refine how they work. I want to talk a moment also about the importance of workforce development, because Brian mentioned that. I'm really proud of some partnerships that BD has had that's helped us continue to fill these pipelines to help get people into these roles. One is our partnership with BTI, the Biotechnical Institute. This helps train people with high school degrees to fill some of the more basic manufacturing roles that we have. Interestingly, they also train people to take some key roles that are in demand at our biggest customers, which are clinical laboratories. So it really plays on both sides of the equation. We also have partnered with the University of Baltimore on the Biopark program. This is a really cool initiative that's been a blast to be a part of. This is working with the university to build out a facility where we truly can partner on building and developing new systems, but also exposing people who are students or early career researchers to our most cutting edge technology. So again, it's a win-win. We get feedback from experts that in the past we never would have had access to, and these individuals at the university are getting exposure to potentially industry roles, what's coming down the pipeline in technology. And then we're also partnering with the University of Maryland, Baltimore on the Cures Scholarship Program. This is targeted at underprivileged middle school and high school students who have an interest in pursuing STEM in the future. It's really amazing. The average GPA of these students who are enrolled, it's over 3.0. They're taking really tough classes, and it's really an accelerator to get them to college and to pursue sciences and technology in the long term. So, I talked about all these different things we do. That also means when it comes to partnering with the community on development, we have to look at all those things as well.
So Alex, I think you told me the other day that Becton Dickinson's now 125 years old, so it's not been here briefly and probably is going to be around for a long time. What does it look like from the inside, from people who come in to a career position at BD? It seems like one of those places that you can come in the door with a working in manufacturing or even with a high school degree or something like that, and have sort of the world in front of you from career possibilities.
So I spent most of my career working in startups and biotech, so learning about BD, learning about industry was, for me, also a new experience. I remember one of the first things that really surprised me was learning the median tenure at the company was something like 11 and a half years. And, coming from the biotech world and startup world where most companies aren't even 11 and a half years old, that was pretty shocking. And as I've gotten to know people who've been there throughout their career, what is most consistent among them is that there's been change. We really focus on developing people by giving them exposure to new roles, different businesses that are under our umbrella. So someone who might start manufacturing in high volume, over time maybe express an interest or the ability to do something more complex, we'll put them on a project where we're transferring a new project to our plant. And then maybe over time we have them think about, well, we have to build a new facility. Would you like to be involved in helping us do the design of the build or working with our approach to compliance? So there really are endless opportunities for people who are interested, and I'm really proud of the fact, again, that we're able to take people and allow them to pursue a long, fruitful career, not just doing one thing, but growing themselves and doing many different types of projects throughout their time with us.
And Brian, do you want to add anything from your experience at Kite and AstraZeneca?
I think I would just echo what Alex said, and so I think one of the, as I described previously, there's all kinds of different roles that people can have, right? So I think it's actually a great opportunity for people to come in, have an entry-level role within a company in the life science industry, and learn how things work, and then you get ready to take that next step. And a lot of companies are really good at career development, some better than others, but they're really good at providing people opportunities, and whether it's tuition reimbursement or it's joining new projects to pick up new skills on the job. There's a lot of opportunities for people to come in, and maybe you don't have your dream job on day one. Most people don't, but there's opportunities to take that progression and take that step and to learn different things. I know when I started at Lilly over 20 years, Eli Lilly in Indianapolis over 20 years ago, I never imagined I'd be doing what I'm doing right now. So it's fun to see where the adventure may take you, and the life science industry really affords people those opportunities.
So one of the things maybe both of you want to talk about is we sometimes use words like advanced biomanufacturing or advanced manufacturing, which Alex did. A lot of times people don't understand how complex the work is that a lot of the companies are doing here. And it is, it's very hard to describe what Brian's company, Kite, was doing. But in essence, they were taking a patient who had cancer, taking their blood from them at a hospital, or having the physician do that, shipping it to a facility in Urbana, Maryland, genetically modifying it, and sending it, growing those cells and sending them back to the patient so their patient's own blood or their own immune cells could treat the cancer. And these literally were patients who were at last line therapy. This was really their last hope. And in Brian's case, you guys usually, 10 or 12 days where that whole process would occur, where you're making a single person's therapy in a manufacturing facility and sending it back to them, which is very different from the world of AstraZeneca, right, where you're making things in massive quantities for worldwide use. So maybe if you want to talk a little bit about just the diversity of manufacturing you've seen here in the state from a therapeutic side, then maybe Alex from a diagnostic side.
Sure. So first, I will say, how do I start? So I would say that the cell therapy products, similar like what Kite provides, there's other great companies out there who do the same. It is a very personal business. It's a very personal connection that employees feel to patients, because I mean, I'd say my own father-in-law was a patient, and he received a cell therapy product from where I used to work, and it saved his life. Right? He would not be here today without it. And so it is a very personal connection, but I would say whether you're at AZ or Kite or BD or anywhere, you feel that connection, and so you feel like you're helping society and doing a wonderful thing. And so it's also a big pull, I think, for people to come into the industry to sell that and to say, look, yes, you can go make something anywhere, you could come make something here, and by the way, you're saving someone's life along the way. And that's a very special feeling. As far as the type of technical aspects, there are many similarities, frankly, between what we do, and so you need to be able to work in a clean room environment. You need to have great attention to detail. In some cases, good manual dexterity, depending what the role is. But the scientists who create these processes and create these products, they do a pretty good job, frankly, of thinking about manufacturability as those processes are designed. And so it tries to create an environment, whether it's via process automation or just a very, very simple process to execute once you get into high volume. You can do that without a 4-year degree, right? You can come in and do these roles without having to have a PhD. And so you can come in and have maybe an associate's degree or a high school degree and come in and learn on the job, like I described with the apprentice program. And so it's things where there are opportunities for everybody, frankly, to come in. And again, I think I said it once already, but I truly do believe that diversity of background and perspective brings a lot of strength to an organization, because it helps you to overcome problems that maybe you wouldn't be able to overcome otherwise, because people have different ideas. So I think the technical aspects of the roles are challenging. Don't get me wrong; it's very hard. That's why it takes a long time to get a product to market within the industry. But it is something that the industry is getting better and better at managing and creating an environment where these products can be delivered reliably to all patients.
Alex, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to reinforce also how incredible the work you're describing is. CAR T, gene therapies. It really speaks to the fact that life sciences, it is constantly evolving, and it's accelerating. It's not as if like we've reached some apex years ago and now steady state. It gets faster and faster. And so when we talk about the types of roles and the things that our companies do, it's really hard to even say what it will look like 10 years from now, except we know it'll be new, it'll be different, it will require people with the most cutting edge skills, it will require partnerships with universities and between companies. It's more about how do we make sure we can continuously evolve and do these things rather than just respond to what we need today. I think that's why it's such a great industry as well to be a part of. I talked a moment ago about one of the things we try and make sure people have in their career at BD is variety and change, but that's true for our companies as well. It's true BD's 125 years old, makes us very unique in public companies to have had that long of a track record, but we got here because we have changed how we operate. We've changed where we see medicine going and make sure we adapt and adopt along the way. Right now, what we see as the future, just to give you a sense for how we currently are changing our workforce and our approach, we see some really major themes. We see AI becoming more and more involved in not just research, but the day-to-day of clinical decision making, robotics and automation, primarily as a response to a limited and aging workforce and an increasing demand in healthcare, and then changing settings where healthcare is delivered. So moving away from clinics and hospitals, more towards the home, the workplace, schools, and elsewhere. So the steps we're taking today are to prepare us for a future where all those things have become the norm, and it's by bringing people with the right skills, making the right partnerships that we hope to be successful.
So, as I mentioned before, we'll take questions just a few minutes. So, if you have any, get prepared. I'm not sure if there's a microphone somewhere. Also, if you're watching online, again, the email address is myvoice@mdtechcouncil.com, and I'm sure someone will get those to me. So, a couple of things. I mentioned before the number of vacant jobs we have here in the state of Maryland, life sciences now. There's over 3,000 of them. And as I said, the average salary for those jobs is over $129,000 a year. So, this is a very significant financial opportunity for the people who live here in the state, for incredibly high-paying jobs, careers, very long-term careers that are going to keep them here and help support their families well and support our economy well. I saw Rick Abruzzi a little bit earlier walking around. So a group he works with called We Work for Health a couple of years ago published an analysis of the impact of life sciences on the state of Maryland. So for every dollar in income, there's about a $2.70 impact, a multiplier effect in the state. So if we've lost, that's from suppliers that locate here to support those companies. It's from the money those employees spend to support local businesses. So if we've lost $400 or $500 million in GDP over the last 5 years, it's probably closer to $1.1, $1.2 billion in economic impact that's had. So it's a big opportunity for the state to focus on. I think probably a fair question for me at this moment is, that's wonderful, Brad, we've got a problem, what do we do about it? So I think what the opportunity is, there's a lot of other states who've already done this, and as I said, we're losing ground to those states pretty significantly. Massachusetts was probably the first. About 15 years ago, they decided that life sciences was a key strategic industry for the state, and agreed to then spend $1 billion on the life sciences industry, which was $100 million a year for 10 years, which 5 years ago they renewed again for another $1 billion. I'm not asking for that, and that's actually it's not only a big number, it's a very complex number. It includes things like economic incentives and other things. Alex talked a little bit about the environment here and the ecosystem, which needs to improve, but I can tell you after 26 years it has improved, so some of that is just growth. The more companies we get here, the more they grow, those problems tend to solve themselves somewhat. There are some things, though, that are significant. When we look at it, the Maryland Tech Council a few years ago, it's been 5 or 6 years ago now, started the Venture Mentoring Service to help both companies in technology and biotechnology help to raise capital, to help train founders and mentor them and understand how to go out and raise primarily Series A capital. So to date, that organization has helped those companies raise almost $150 million in capital, which is pretty amazing. David Tone, who's here, is the vice chair of the Tech Council and the chair of the Maryland, or the technology side of the board. I chair the life sciences side. We're both on the management committee of that group. And it's incredible, what an impact you can make in a short period of time. So I think it's thinking about what are not $1.5 billion problems we can solve, what are small, tangible, immediate impact sort of problems we can solve. One of the biggest things is solving the workforce issue here. Those jobs are vacant today, right? And it's how do we get those skills and people who live here in Maryland today so they can be working tomorrow and have high-paying jobs with good career opportunities. and we've seen what states have done, right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you go to the state of North Carolina, who's one of our biggest competitors, right? We can never compete with them on land costs, right? It's very inexpensive, or it's getting more expensive, but relatively inexpensive compared to Maryland as far as land costs. So what we can compete with is on talent. And that's really one of the most critical elements any life sciences company has. Those states have invested in building biotech training facilities to educate our workforce. And it's easy to think that that's an academic issue, right? We have an incredible university system, the University System of Maryland. We have Johns Hopkins University, private colleges like Hood College, which Kite partnered with, incredible two-year colleges here in the state. I can tell you from personal experience, maybe Brian or Alex have different, it's always a challenge on the academic side. What you're teaching people are academic skills, and you're teaching people how to do research, but not necessarily how to do applied research. So for me, coming at this as a scientist by training, when I was in college, I learned how to understand to do science. I could do experiments, I could work on a bench. I was never taught how to do applied work and applied science in a regulated environment. And it's very, very different. I can tell you the facilities that Brian has worked in, it's not just walking in, putting stuff in a test tube and hoping it goes well. It's literally everything you do has to be done exactly the same way every time, the right way, because people's lives depend on it. So the academic institutions here are incredible partners, but it is a different skill set to prepare people to go, not to work for a place like the National Institute or somewhere else where you're doing basic research, but to go to a place where you're developing and manufacturing drugs or products to treat human health. So there is a gap that needs to be closed, and that gap really is one that where it's been successful has been industry driven, where the industry has said, we know what skills we need, we know what tools these employees need to have. We just need a process, an organization, and a facility to be able to teach people those skills so they walk into the door as close to day one and have the skills necessary to be successful here. I sort of view it as this. It's what are those basic core skills to work in the life sciences industry that are necessary, how you understand the regulatory environment, documentation, standard operating procedures, those sorts of things that a place like BioHub Maryland can teach those students. And that's the gap from academic to applied. What I can never teach them is what Brian's SOPs are at his facility, right? What unique processes they use to manufacture products are the same with Alex. So it really is closing that gap from education to applied knowledge and then going into the workforce where the company can take over that investment in the employee. And I think both Alex and Brian mentioned this. This is an industry where companies invest incredibly in their employees. They're very valuable employees, and I've never seen any life sciences company who wasn't very happy to pay for someone to go get a master's degree or advanced education or anything like that. They're incredibly happy to have people do that and very supportive of it. So I think it's an opportunity for the state to step up and invest in BioHub Maryland so that we can build a facility to provide the skills necessary to grow our workforce here and to have a competitive advantage against the other states. And quite honestly, this is a global industry now, right? Alex mentioned this before. You can make products overseas, and frequently, even the products made here in Maryland are part of a global supply chain where they may get manufactured here in the state of Maryland and may go to another country to get put into whatever their delivery device may be, whether it's a vial or a syringe or something else. So I think that's the important thing to think about is this is an opportunity for our state to invest in workforce development and really applied workforce development, and this is a really relatively low-cost, high-value solution for them. So with that, Brian, Alex, you want to add anything before we start to take some questions?
Sure. Yeah, I think that. Thanks, Brad. That's very well said. Frankly, I think the key thing there is the partnerships, right? And so it would be fine for one company to go off and try to solve it for that particular company, and that's fine. That adds value for them in the short term. But what if that one company went and joined with 8 other companies, and then they went and joined with commerce and labor, and then they went and joined with the community colleges and the four-year schools in the area and the trade groups and said, okay, we're going to work together The companies say, I need X, Y, and Z. I need people to walk in the door and know how to do these things. And then the people at colleges say, oh, I know how to teach that really well. I'm really good at that. And then we can work with the other groups. And then the commerce and labor come in and say, okay, I can support you and make sure you've got the right support you need from a policy standpoint or funding standpoint. And so I think working together is how we win. I think that's the key to this. Going separately or everyone's saying, I know the best thing to do, I don't care what you all say, that's not how we're going to win. And so I think it's one of the great things about the BioHub. It is bringing people together from the different areas to try to solve that problem together and not have one person run off on their own and try to do it in a silo. So I think those partnerships, as Brad described, are absolutely critical to the success of the industry in the region.
Yeah, I fully agree. One of the themes we hit on several times in this conversation was the breadth of our industry, both in what we do, the types of products we build, so an advanced gene therapy and a syringe. The skills that are needed, basic manufacturing and advanced electromechanical manufacturing, the role that startups play. The ultimate situation is that you have to have the full ecosystem to do life sciences and do it well and to be competitive with the states and other locations that currently are leading the way. And so you're right, we can't do this in a silo. It can't be just BD. It can't be just a startup incubator. It has to be all these organizations working together to build that pipeline of talent, to build the variety of opportunities, to create access to the wide variety of manufacturing skills that we need. And I think we're heading in the right direction. I agree with what Brad said earlier, but we can do more, we can do better, and I think it's through the people in this room today that we can accelerate that and make sure we're successful.
Thanks, Alex and Brian. So any questions from people here in the audience? We're not shy. Please, go ahead. I don't, yeah, I'll bring this down to you.
For the people that are remote. Hi, my name is Andrew Coy. I'm CEO and president of Digital Harbor Foundation, but I also wear a school board hat. So I'm a school board commissioner for Baltimore City Schools. My question relates to the Maryland Blueprint for Education, which is also known as Kirwan Commission, or came out of the Kirwan Commission. And recently, the superintendent of Maryland State Department of Education, Mohammed Chandri, has talked about the goal for apprenticeship. And this gets at the question about workforce development, but the goal is that there's 45% of Maryland graduates from our school system, public school system, have either an apprenticeship or an industry certification but when they graduate. There's 57,000 graduates annually in Maryland, and currently we are at 7% who have those graduates. So there's a huge delta there. We're talking like 25,000 graduating high school seniors a year in Maryland that the State Department of Education is saying will need to do a thing that's very much in line with exactly what you're talking about. And my question for you is, what would need to be true from the technology company collaborative? And I really appreciate the goal of like going together, right? The old adage of if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And thinking about like how do we build a robust way to receive that influx that is coming. There's funding from the State Department of Education to the local education authorities to support in the educational aspects of that, but there's not funding to support the businesses in the receiving side of that. And I also think, just yesterday, it's very fresh in our minds with the inauguration of Governor Moore, the emphasis on a year of service. And I'm curious if there's some way that these things tie together in your minds for what you are looking at. And this applies to different industry areas, domains, but given your expertise in the biotech and what we can see there to help young people find pathways through apprenticeship, industry certifications, year of service, gap year, those types of things, and what would need to be true on the technology company side to receive this coming influx. And maybe the last sort of part of this is, was this on your radar as a thing that is happening? That's just good to kind of get a sense for, this is in the education circles, has been talked about, but is it propagating in a way that you all even knew this was an expectation that was coming down?
So I'll start with that one. So regarding the apprenticeship model, in my role at BD, I actually split my time between Maryland and the Netherlands. And we have a large manufacturing R&D facility there as well, where the apprenticeship model is live and well. I mean, I see firsthand the talent we have access to who want to have a career in manufacturing. It's viewed as a career, not as a job. And we really don't do that. It's not a Maryland problem, it's a US problem, frankly. I'm not familiar with the program you're describing. I'd like to learn more because ultimately the best way to be an apprentice is to do and to have people come spend time in our facilities, not just to get a feel for how you do the job, but do they like that and what do they want to do in their career. So certainly I'd like to learn some more about that, and I'm very supportive of that model.
Yeah, I would agree. My prior to Kaida, I mentioned I was at AstraZeneca for about 10 years, and as probably everyone knows, it's a very international company, very global company, and has headquarters in the UK as well as Sweden. And in the UK, the apprentice program is very strong, similar to what you described in the Netherlands, to where it has lots of people coming in, and that's the way a lot of people get into the industry is via this apprentice program. And so I also was not aware of those numbers. That's very interesting, actually, and it'd be good to learn more about that. But I think that's exactly what would help the industry, right? It's kind of what we've been talking about is if we can get these industry certifications for people coming out of high school, if we go into the middle schools and say, look, this is biotech, this is life science, this is what you can do, that can get kids and their parents, very excited about it. I think from a tech perspective, the key is to provide the setting where students can come in and do this in I'll say a risk-free or a safe manner, right? So you don't want them going in and working on someone's product, right? A patient's product right away, because that could be problematic in many ways. And so you need to create an environment where these people can come in and train in a safe environment, which is what we're in our infancy very much, but we're trying to head down that direction with the BioHub. Great question.
There was a second half to your question. What was it?
So it was awareness of, and then what needs to be true to receive that, right? So if there's going to be this big influx, like what should be planning now as these different LEAs, so Howard County Schools, Baltimore City Public Schools, like all these school districts are going to be judged on how well they are placing their graduating seniors in these programs in their junior and senior year. And so I'm looking at this and saying they're all going to be scrambling and asking for all these things, and is the industry ready to receive? So like what needs to be true for the industry to receive this and not have a mismatch where you all are saying we need talent and there's school systems saying we want these, but now it's just like we're just missing each other in the night.
Yeah, I think it's as simple as making sure they're involved prior to graduating. Get them exposure, make it more of a co-op experience, because one of our themes as well has been you don't learn these things generally in school, you have to learn them on the job. And we do internship programs for a lot of technical roles. Doing them for manufacturing would also be something I'm sure we'd entertain.
And so I'll add a little bit, and I've got another microphone in my hand, so I'm going to try not to cause feedback here. So a couple of unique challenges. I think both of them have been mentioned, but one of the things that we see, the life sciences industry is very different than the technology industry. There aren't simple nationwide certifications or international certifications where somebody has a certificate that says I've learned this skill and I can check that box on my resume. That doesn't exist in our industry. It's something that with BioHub we've started to look at that problem and say different people around the country have sort of ad hoc created those things. There are some identifiable skills that you can put out there and train people for, whether it's with equipment like HPLC or other things like that, which are somewhat technical. So that is a problem that we're aware of and does need to be solved. I think Brian mentioned something that's very important, and that is it's building an environment, which BioHub is intended to fund and build a training facility, not a manufacturing facility, but a place where people can learn and fail. That's not an option in a facility that they're running, right? You don't have that luxury. Once you walk in those doors, you have to do what has to be done, and it has to be done right. So we currently don't have that sort of safe environment where people can learn, and you do have to fail to learn, right? You have to learn. I don't want it to be taken as fail to learn, but you have to make those mistakes. And part of the training, and a group of us spent a week in Ireland working with the most renowned training institute that does this sort of stuff. It's literally letting people do the work, make mistakes, solve the problems, understand how not to make those mistakes, where you can then sort of safely, because again, we're talking about life and death in many cases here, let them transition to some of these employers. And I think that's a gap that just needs to be closed to accomplish that. So I've got some questions online. I know Brian Darmody asked next, and then we're getting close on time, and then you were after Brian. So.
Thanks. Brian Darmody from the Association of University Research Parks. And Brad, you kind of touched on that, but I used to work at the University of Maryland, so I remember 10 years ago, we had a similar issue with cybersecurity training. You know, the same issue was, you know, academia we were issuing computer science degrees, but, you know, they weren't necessarily the kind of degrees that industry could connect to. And I know Wes Bush, who was CEO of, Northrop Grumman, called together, but he did it on a regional basis. So there was a lot of discussion among industry there, and I think it's proven successful as a model, but I don't know enough about the bio industry to know, industry credentials, whether they are an important part of this. But I do think there are some parallels to what Maryland and actually DC and Virginia did on a regional basis to address workforce challenges in cybersecurity. And I was just wondering if you saw some parallels on the bio side.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Absolutely. And so one of the things we've been talking about is there are some schools that try to create certificate programs, those types of things, but again, they're not well tied to the industry needs, kind of what you described for cybersecurity a while back. And really, I think a lot of that is on industry. Frankly, that's on us to make sure that we're making it really obvious what we need people to be able to do when they walk in the door. And so I think making the needs very, very clear, and then putting the effort and time into working with the academic institutions and others to help to build those programs is important to do, and will take some effort from the industry to make that happen.
And just to comment, one of the challenges is these are, in many cases, fairly advanced skills, so these aren't necessarily the type of VOTEC type programs you would see in a high school. These are ones where you probably need people who are 18 plus and have basic educational skills. The state of Massachusetts, again, is a great example. When we talked about education, they started 15 years ago with their strategic plan, embedding STEM as one of their key priorities in K through 12. What we're talking about here with this program at BioHub is solving a current problem, an immediate and ongoing problem. It's a different issue of how we solve that problem statewide and how we get better STEM-ready students for technology and life sciences. So one more question here from the audience, and I'll go to the online ones. Are you going to make?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I am Alexis Lawson, and now we're running out of time. I'm a business engagement specialist at Howard County Office of Workforce Development, and I just wanted to address your comment as well. The American Job Centers, we are out here. We are trying to connect to businesses. Kelly Schultz, I know you can speak for that as well. We've got our apprenticeship navigators that are out there talking to businesses, trying to get them to become a registered apprenticeship. So just wanted to let you know there are 33 in Maryland. We are out there talking to businesses, excited about apprenticeship, making those connections with our high schools. We've got our ARLs out there, our research labs as well, just connecting with our high school students. So just want to put our plug. We're out there, we're talking, and we're making those connections. So just wanted to let you know, don't forget about your American Job Centers. We are the best kept secret.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So a couple of questions from online I'll try and address, and one of them was directed to Alex, but as far as the breakdown, the average salary I said in life sciences is $129,000 in the US, and the question from Ray Blanchard was how that breaks down. There's a lot of different types of jobs we've talked about here. One question was about sales roles. We don't have a lot of salespeople in the state of Maryland that are involved in pharmaceuticals. We may have people who have sales operations that are headquartered here, but generally sales roles tend to be scattered across the country, just depending on where there's populations and physicians and hospitals, those sorts of things. Generally, those roles are very well paying, but in Maryland, they're not disproportionate to any other state. Manufacturing, I think Brian maybe can add some color. There tends to be a lower range of starting salaries for those. Some of those are very low skilled, whether it's stacking boxes or at BD, they have people who put together cardboard boxes and put put different components in there. So those may start at $60,000 a year, $50,000 a year, and go up. And then obviously, the more skilled a person is, the more education they have, the more specialized their job, the higher those become. But I think it's fair to say across whether it's manufacturing. I come from I like to call it overhead, sales, general, administrative. I typically run companies. I think you see even in whether it's manufacturing or marketing or other things like that, that those salaries go up quite significantly throughout all of the silos within the industry. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's about right. And the other thing that's worth pointing out again is the life science industry tends to have, in addition to the base salary or hourly rate, very strong benefits and all those types of things like you would expect to see. And so I know I wish I could make what a entry-level manufacturing tech makes today. I wish I could have done that when I came out of school. I would probably have been in a much better state to start out with. So I think there's some great opportunities for people in the industry at all levels.
Regarding the seemingly high figure for the average compensation in life sciences, that's not an artifact driven by just a bunch of high-end executive salaries. I mean, you can look at public companies. What is their average compensation per employee that they have? And at BD and many of our peers, it's close to that number we were saying before for those advanced manufacturing jobs. It's not like we have some manufacturing roles where the numbers are just brought up by other people in other roles. That's the majority of what we do. That's the majority of our people.
So one more question, then I'll answer another one Ray asked, which was because there's so many different diverse industries here in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, does life sciences sort of get diluted that mix? We've got Amazon HQ2 in Virginia. We have a ton of aerospace here in the state of Maryland. We have a lot of federal government research institutions. We have people who are in cybersecurity. So I think, yes, I think for the reason I mentioned earlier that it's not that likely you live next door to someone who works in the life sciences industry, so it's just not something that you know about. And it's much more likely that you may know someone who works in cybersecurity or works for the federal government. So I think that is a challenge, and I think that's something our workforce partners and others, the people in the schools, can help people learn. The BioHub does try and do that. They have an entire website that's to explain what these jobs are, what skills are necessary. Ray asked about how the jobs pay. You can actually go to the BioHub Maryland website and look at jobs by educational level, and it'll tell you what jobs you can have with a GED or an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree or master's degree, what all those different roles are and what the average salaries are. So the data's there right on the BioHub Maryland website. So our last question, and I want to let everyone know that Pam told me a few minutes ago when she gave me the questions that we have over 1,100 people who are joining us online right now. So thank you to everyone who's watching us out there. Jason Knott, who's with the Maryland Department of Commerce, and the Maryland Department of Commerce has been a great partner of the Maryland Tech Council, supportive of the work that it does. Kelly Schultz, who's the former secretary of the Department of Commerce. Jason Knott asked the question. We have also Uliana Desiderio, who is the person at industry specialist for biotechnology at the State Department of Commerce. So if you get a chance to say hi to Uliana today, I appreciate it. Jason asked how something like BioHub gets funded and paid for. So as Kelly mentioned, the organization has raised $5 million so far from state and federal grants. Very appreciative of that. From an ongoing perspective, when we look at other organizations like this around the country, one, there's always been significant state involvement. Most of those states have funded the physical facility necessary to train these students and give them an environment where they can be trained and make those mistakes and learn how to be critical thinkers and understand what they're doing. The second part of that is ongoing operations, and that typically comes through a mixture. If we look at the state of North Carolina, which is fairly advanced in this perspective, they get several $1 million per year from the state to fund ongoing operations, but the significant amount of their funds come from other sources, which is from industry, companies who are out there paying to send employees back to training. These are probably not the entry-level employees for the first time. That's usually where the state funding is spent. It's to do more advanced training for employees who are already engaged in the industry. You see funding from organizations like that. So it's really a mixture of state funding, workforce, development funding, obviously is certainly an opportunity, and industry is certainly an opportunity. So it's a mixture of those, and we look forward to everyone's help and support, and that's it. So thank you all. I appreciate it, and I'll turn it back over to Kelly. No?
I'm happy to take on, but this is what I will say. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and so we're going to take about 15 minutes and get get another cup of coffee if you need it, but be ready because the next panel is going to start in just a few minutes. So take a little break and be right back.
Okay.
Thank you.